Joining me now is Austin Moe, has a great song out there called The River. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. Now, I was reading through the notes. I was listening to the song on repeat 4 or 5 times this morning while I was going through all of it. Love the song. We'll talk about it in a little bit. What I thought was great, you're in your early 20s, so I thought it made sense for the age you are that you didn't start out just playing guitar. I love the fact that you really started out playing Guitar Hero. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that and what some of your favorite songs were on that game.
So the Guitar Hero that struck a chord with me, along with probably tens of thousands of kids, was I believe it came out probably around 2008 to 9 area. It was Guitar Hero 3.
Okay, sure.
And I got way too good at that, way too quick. And the first song that I ever played on the hardest difficulty was Slow Ride by Foghat.
Wow.
And so there was like songs like that. There was Tenacious D. There was, of course, the super hardest one, Dragon Force, which I still can't play today, but I'm okay with it. But I got way too good at that to the point where I would walk around the house and do chores, not facing the television, and I would still not miss a note. And so I was kind of learning the songs, but just on 5 buttons. And
Yeah.
so my dad called me into his room one day and he was like, "Hey, you're really good at this game, and would you ever want to pick up a guitar?" Because in his mind he was like, "Well, Austin's learning the music, but just on 5 buttons. So imagine what would happen if you put that time into a like actual instrument." And I was like, "Well, I don't really have a guitar, and I don't have the money for that right now." And because this is right around middle school, like seventh grade area. And my dad was like, "Well, if you had a guitar, would you play it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And so he called up his friend, and his friend lent him the Flying V that's actually in that video of the river. And I was only supposed to have it for like 5 or 6 months just to get some basics down and, maybe play Smoke on the Water or something. And I've
Right, of course. Yeah.
I've had it for 10 years now and I still haven't put it down.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's and that's a lot of times people's first guitar is probably not something as cool as that. It's like a $20 acoustic guitar or something. So,
Oh yeah. I was
yeah, I think
spoiled.
that's funny what you're talking about, sort of the way you're going around, learning these songs by pushing the 5 buttons. It's almost like if there'd been a video game of some sort where, we're like cooking all day, it would be like, well, why don't you just cook for real,
Yeah.
instead of like making pretend food, So
Yeah.
I think that's a great instinct by your dad. And now, at some point, did you still every once in a while go back to Guitar Hero where because it was fun, or you were just like, no, no, the real thing is where it's really at?
Every once in a while, like there's one time where I hurt myself really bad to the point where I couldn't play guitar for like 2 weeks. And so to get my fix, I pulled out Guitar Hero and I would invite my friends over who I normally jam with. And they're like,
Right.
"What are we going to do? Your arm's broken." And I'm like, "We're going to play Guitar Hero." And they're like, "But you're still better at that than me." I'm like, "That's okay. I just got to get my fix, man. I just got to have music one way or another."
And so when you start actually playing the guitar, what are I read that some of your influences are, very impressive influences, and maybe it's a little daunting to try to live up to people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Joe Bonamassa, Jimi Hendrix. Had you listened to a lot of different sorts of music before Guitar Hero, or was the guitar what made you try to seek out somebody like, I mean, I think at the time you're talking 2008 in middle school, there probably weren't a lot of kids that were like, oh, you should really listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, my earliest memory of music is my dad driving me to elementary school in his Pro Street 1974 Camaro. And the very first song that I can remember hearing as a child growing up is Peter Frampton's "Do You Feel Like We Do" off of Frampton Comes Alive, specifically the talk box section. And every time that would come on, I would always ask him. It probably he would play it like in the car, outside of the car. But every time that came on, I was like, "Hey, what's that sound?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Well, that's called a talk box." I'm like, "Well, what's that do?" And he's like, "Well, I don't
Yeah.
know exactly, but it's something to do with your mouth and you move it." And then the record would start all over again, and then a wah would come on, and I'm like, "Well, hey, what's that sound?" And he's like, "Well, that's a wah pedal." And I'm like, "Well, what does that do?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, that creates a wah." So I've always been intrigued by music at a very young age, and he would play, anything from Kiss to Dio, ACDC, Tesla, and like UFO, and then my mom would play Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, and like Junior Brown. So I had a
Yeah.
very wide
Yeah.
range of music, and then when I started getting into the blues, it was only after I met this kid at Guitar Center who he was really like he loved the blues, and so we were jamming one day. It was just happenstance. He came in the same day that I did, and we jammed. And I wasn't really that good, but he was in my mind like just years ahead of me. And so he invited me out to a blues jam one day, and thankfully the host could see that I was learning guitar, but he was gracious enough to let me on stage and play with them for 3 or 4 songs. And then that was it. I got bit by the blues and started looking up Steve Ray Vaughan and BB King and Joe Bonamassa and Albert King and all those guys.
Yeah, it's funny because you were talking about, you hear the sounds and you're wondering what they were. I don't know if in, thousands of years of music history, if anything has been better named than the wah wah pedal, because it's like, well, what does it do? What goes wah? So, it's a
Yeah.
wah pedal, you
Yeah.
know. And it's funny because Frampton Comes Alive is sort of this, that's the defining moment for the talk box, really. But
Mm.
it really caught on for a while there. Like there's this great there's this great Aerosmith live performance from it was the Texas Jam in 1978, and Joe Perry like wouldn't get that thing out of his mouth. It was just
Oh,
like
yeah, I mean, of
song
course.
songs
It's
that maybe it
fun.
didn't even need to be in there. He's just like, yeah, but check this out. But there's something like Sweet Emotion. You're like, oh, that's so cool with that added to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, you see it every once in a while. It's but it's kind of like it's almost like the theremin. That thing you play with your hands. It's like
Oh
every
yeah.
once in a while there's like a song that requires it. But yeah, and I think. I don't know. I doubt that Frampton was thinking in the way where he should have bought stock in that company when Frampton Comes Alive came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the what you're talking about, sort of in terms of your parents, it makes sense. What the influence would be, and look, there's no reason to sell short Merle Haggard or Johnny Cash. It's just a very different vibe. Like
Totally.
my dad had like all the Beatles records and the Doors and the Stones right up through the early 70s. And so like that was stuff that I would hear. But man, my mom sure loved Barry Manilow and John Denver, and and it's you sort of can appreciate songwriting even if that wasn't necessarily the kind of music that I gravitated to. But
Yeah.
your parents just really make such an impact on it. That's why I try to. My son's 5, so I try to figure out like, all right, what's going to be important for him, and what do I not want him to hear, and it's
Yeah,
like,
no, no, no
when
Kid
he's
Rock just yet.
really little, there was that. Yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, exactly. No, you're not old enough to be an American badass. All right. But you
Yeah.
want to make that transition from when they want to hear like the Baby Shark song to like, yeah, yeah. But how about Rock and Roll Night from Kiss? That's all right. They don't say
Hmm.
anything too bad in that one,
Yeah.
and it's something I'm very conscious of. So that's why I thought it was interesting. So, I guess, so you start really playing guitar, I guess you're like 12, but then you get to be a part of some really impressive things. I guess you were 16 and you played in Europe as part of something called Blues Kids of America. Talk about how that even comes about. And cause you're talking like just a few years earlier, you don't consider yourself very good at playing the blues, but
Yeah.
then you end up in Europe doing it. So talk kind of about how that comes about.
So the way that transpired was we were going through the phase where they could tell that I was improving a lot each week, and we were just trying to expand our, like, I guess, demographic and range and where I was playing, because I had a little blues band and we were doing lots of Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff, and people were loving it. And so my mom was on the internet just trying to find either guitar competitions or like people who sponsor young kids. And she came across this website that's called the Blues Kids of America. And it's put on by this amazing dude by the name of Fernando Jones. He's out of Chicago and he teaches at, I forgot which, it's the biggest music school there. He's one of the teachers. And he puts on these little blues camps for free, mind you, all over the world. So he's actually, they've done some in Japan. When I went to London, it was the very first time they went out of the US. But when we found it, we noticed that the one that they had planned for LA had just filled up. The one in Chicago, I think it ended the day that my mom found this website. And then there was London, England. And my mom goes, "Hey, we should audition and try and go to London, England." And I was like, "You out of your mind? Like, we've
Yeah.
never even been to Las Vegas, let alone a different
London.
country."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, come on." So I was very like, "That's impossible. Like, Mom, you're way too out of the box." And she was like, "No, you need to do it." And so the process that you needed to do to be considered for the camps was they had a list of songs and jam tracks, and also another little like bonus section if you actually like knew the song. So BB King's "The Thrill Is Gone" was one of them, and I was all, "Oh, I can do that. It's just in the key of B, and it's a 145." And
Mhm.
so I got my little Tascam recorder. It's $100, and it's got an X and Y microphone. And I grabbed my chair, my computer chair in the family room. I stuck it in between my dad's 300-watt Harman Kardon home theater system, and I grabbed my half stack and I put that behind it, and I cranked both of them up to as loud as it could go. I did one take, and then I uploaded it and sent it to the um, the Blues Kids of America, and then I sent it to my mom because I was in the headspace of, well, if they want me, they can have me, but if not, it wasn't meant to be. And then my mom listened to it and she was like, "Oh, that's okay, but didn't you want to like maybe try it again?" I was like, "I already sent it."
You
So,
already sent it.
and then thankfully they loved it because within 2 hours they got back to us and said, "Hey, if you can make it to London, England, you're more than welcome to come and hang out and be a part of this blues camp." And so then it was a matter of, oh my God, now we got to get
Yeah.
to London. And so we did fundraisers and all of this. And one of them was put on by Ike Turner's first daughter, Twana. And she was before Ike and Tina. So it was from his first marriage.
Okay.
And she was amazing. A bunch of local really good musicians came and raised a couple $1,000s to help us fly over there. And even the day that I was on Fox 40, it was like 6 a.m. that they wanted me to be there, and I was. We still didn't have any plane tickets, but we were on the news saying, "Yeah, 16-year-old Sacramento, Austin Mose flying to London and this and that." And our family friend saw us on the news, called my brother and asked what the situation was. And she goes, "Oh, well, I have enough points for them to be round trip for free. Would that help you guys?" And we were like, yeah. And so we
Yeah.
booked a flight for like 1 o'clock that evening, or 1 p.m. It was
Sure. Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
And so we ran home, packed everything up that we could, flew in, and got down to the Sacramento airport as fast as we could. Then we hopped on a plane to LA. And then from LA, it was a 13-hour flight to London. And that was the very first time I've ever been in an airplane. And so it was overseas, 13 hours. And then once we hit international borders, the stewardess were like, "Hey, do you want anything to drink?" I was like, "No, I got a water." They were like, "No, would you like some wine or like a beer?" And I'm like looking at my mom. I'm like, "I'm 16. What are these people talking about?"
Yeah. Right.
So it was just awesome, dude. It was such an amazing experience.
And so you're doing that in London, and should I assume that most of the kids there were either from parts of England or just around Europe? I mean, there probably weren't a lot of kids from the US because you talked about how there had been, there'd been some in LA and Chicago. So probably most kids in the US went to events that had happened here, right?
Well, 90% of the kids were from, like Wales and all of that, but there was only five, and myself included, kids that were included from the United States. I think we had a couple thousand entries, at least from the US, and thankfully I was one of the ones that was picked.
And how much time do you spend there as part of this camp?
So the camp itself was only 5 days, but we had never been outside of the country. And so we were talking with, Ike's extended family, and they were like, yeah, you could come up for a couple weeks if you want. And so my mom and I actually stayed there in London in total for 13 days. And we got to see Abbey Road Studios as all of the kids in the camp. We took a field trip down there, and we would jam pretty much all day. The second day that we were in the camp, we got to play in an underground pub, which was really cool. It's called the Spice of Life. And if anybody has the opportunity to go there, I would highly recommend it. But it was surreal, and I want to do it again.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that would be great. Now, obviously, you referenced that you're from Sacramento, and when you were talking about some of the music that your dad, like you mentioned, Tesla. I understand you're working with Frank Hannon. He's producing some music with you. I had him on over the summer. He's working with a band called Red Voodoo, and it seems like he's making the most of his quarantine time, his lockdown time, because he's working on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously, him being a local guy as well. Talk about how that comes about, though, that he takes the time to start working with you on some music.
So the way that we met each other, it was actually it was a blessing because they were on Tesla was on tour, and they were playing this local casino called Thunder Valley, and that holds probably about I think upwards of 20,000 people. I think I'm not 100% sure. And so my family friend at the time knew that it was my 21st birthday coming up, and Tesla was playing the next weekend. And so he surprised me on the day of my birthday with, "Hey, do you want to go see Tesla?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I've seen them and watched them play in bars since they were city kid, just like you're doing right now." So I went on Facebook and I messaged Frank. I was super polite. I was like, "Hey, this is who I am. It's my 21st birthday. My friend's a huge fan. He's been following you guys since you've been city kid. Can we just come backstage and say hello? We won't even take that much of your time, and then we'll just be out of your hair." And I didn't hear anything for a while, and I was like, "Well, it is Sacramento. I can only imagine everybody's trying to get in for free,
Right,
because
exactly.
it's his
Yeah.
hometown." And so then a day later, he hit me up. He was like, "Hey, Austin, good to hear from you. Da da da. Yeah, I can get you, uh, backstage. How many passes do you need?" And I was like, "Uh, Two would be great." He was like, "Yeah, just send me your information, and just show up when you want. We'll let you in." And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna go meet Frank Hannon from Tesla,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna really surprise my friend." And so when we got to the concert, we went backstage first thing, and I think it was right after the meet and greet because it was obvious the little backdrop was set up, and there was like some food that was half eaten next to it. And so I got a picture of just the backdrop and myself. And then we were looking around. We didn't see any of the guys. And so we just went back and sat in our seats. And so by like the second song of the opener, I get a text on my phone. And I was like, "Who's texting me at a concert?" And on like I think it was a Friday or a Saturday. And it's Frank. And he's all, "Hey, man, are you even here?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah. No, we walked backstage, da da da." And he's like, "Oh, well, let me go send one of our guys out. He'll come and bring you to our trailer." And so we got to hang out with Frank, my friend, and I for about 25 minutes before they went on. And then we kind of kept in touch. And I opened up for him last December, which just feels weird saying that because it feels like it was just yesterday. But
Yeah, but
last
here
December,
here we are. It's December now, so
yeah, we got to jam, and it was just an incredible experience. And then after that show, he started talking to me about recording and all of this stuff. And now here we are with the river and the music video, and it's just been a blessing, man. A
yeah.
little bit of a downside because we can't play live, but really a blessing because of his mentorship.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think that I know Frank very little, but I know Brian from Tesla pretty well at this point, and those two are great guys, and that's very cool because I don't think that a lot of people have stories like yours of, oh yeah, I wrote to him on Facebook, and then you end up actually seeing him backstage. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think usually, and it wouldn't even say anything negative about him if he never wrote back. It would just be as simple as like, hey, he probably didn't see it. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
but that's cool that, yeah, you guys actually started doing the music. So let's talk a little bit about the song itself. Now, in the notes, it talks about how there's the Austin Moe experience, and then is this separate from that? Is this just you as a solo artist? Is this part of your band? I wasn't quite sure if there was a difference between the two.
So right now, we are going by Austin Moe just to establish
Okay.
myself as more of like an independent artist. Like, there's, for example, like we were talking about earlier, Steve Ray Vaughan or Joe Bonamassa. It's just their name. And prior to um, that, I was going by the Austin Moe experience because I thought it was a really cool, like the Hendrix experience was. And then eventually I was talking with a whole bunch of people and they were like, yeah, but once certain people left Jimmy's group, he just went by Jimi Hendrix. And I was like, that's correct. And they were like, yeah, so I think it would be a smart move if you just went by Awesome Mo. And I was like, okay, yeah, I understand that it would make people think, oh, it's Austin and let's go see who's backing him rather than with that name, with the whole name, the experience, whoever they see one show, they're going to expect to see the next kind of a thing. But I've been thankful enough to be blessed with playing with some of the best guys in the world. Right now, I'm in the video, I was playing with this guy on drums. His name is Stephen Martin, and my best friend in the world on bass, and his name is Spencer Olson. And these guys just blow me away every time we get together, man.
And how long have you been playing with both of these guys? You said that Spencer's like your best friend in the world. So is he somebody that you guys just used to, mess around and jam together, before you even thought about writing songs?
We've known each other pretty much throughout all of our schooling, and it was
Yeah,
only
sure.
after high school that we really started to jam together. And I had a different lineup at the time, but we would always go out to jams and hang out and just goof off, being
Yeah,
dudes.
sure.
And when it came to the river, I went up to Frank's house and we wrote, you know, the structure of the song. And then I went back home and we jammed it out as a group and we got it a little bit more ahead. And then we went back up to Frank's studio and then we molded it a little bit more. So it's been a real blessing to have these guys playing with me. And plus, they're young, so it makes it look cool.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. So so the river, where would people go to find it? What's the best way? I mean, they obviously, the way anything works now, it's just like, oh, Austin Mo, I'll Google that and then see where it comes
Mhm.
up. But what's the best way? Do you have a YouTube channel or?
So the best way to find the river is quite simply just type in either on Spotify, Apple Music. You could even say, "Hey Alexa, play The River by Austin Moe," and she'll do it. But the easiest way I would say is on YouTube. You could type in "The River" by Austin Moe, and
Mhm.
on Facebook and Instagram, you could just type in Austin Moe official, and we'll pop right up.
Right. And it's Austin Mo.
Yeah.
So just so that people know what they're typing in. And yeah, like I said, I think that the song's great. I was trying to think of, because I always like to be able to say like, oh, to me, sounds like this. And like there, there was a little bit of like a Black Crows feel to it, because there is, they would always have a little bit of, they had that Southern rock thing, but that wasn't all that they did. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it didn't sound so much like them, but it reminded me that, you brought a few things to the table.
Thank you.
And that song, The River, was that something that you've had for a while? Is this a newer song? Did Frank just say this is the one to put out first? What is it about this song that you felt like this is the thing to put out there right now?
Well, when we were writing this song, we were kind of when we were initially looking through ideas. I had my phone out and I brought up my notebook full of lyrical just scribbles and stuff that I've seen on Facebook that I thought kind of caught my ear. And so I had the chorus already written out in my notebook, but when I brought it up there, it was actually a first verse. And then what was going to be the chorus is now the first verse in The River. So Frank was very good at like hearing things and trying and putting them in different places and stuff. And when we listened to all my guitar riffs, I was just sitting there, just not really thinking. And I came up with which is now the main hook, the boom, ba-dum, ba-bum, ba-dum. And Frank heard that and he was like, "Hey, do that again." And I was like, "Do what?" He's like, "Do what you just did." And I was like, "Okay." And so I did it. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's let's work from that." And so then we fleshed it out until it was a solid sounding riff. And then we were like, okay, well, now what are we going to do for the chorus? Because that's what's going to be for the verse. And then he picked up an acoustic and just played, "I'm going down to the river. I'm going down to face the truth." And I was like, "Frank, that's incredible." And he was like, "Yeah, let's work from that." And so it was really just us bouncing ideas back and forth. It really, we wrote the main concept of the song in one day, and it was
Wow,
just,
that's
it
great.
was
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a different kind of music. I can't say that I'm a particularly a fan of Maroon 5, but literally last week I was listening to this interview with Adam Levine, and he talked about songwriting and how a lot of times, oh, I have this great chorus, and the thing to do is to make that the verse, and then work really hard and have an even better chorus.
Yeah,
Like you have this thing that you're really proud of. It's like, yeah, that's great, but don't just rest on your laurels there. And look, there's no arguing I mean, I've heard in a tremendous version he played a Purple Rain at a Howard Stern birthday party. So he's a talented musician, hugely
definitely.
successful. So he definitely knows how to write a song.
Oh yeah,
So that's, I'm always interested in hearing, interviews with people that maybe I don't necessarily gravitate towards, because there's something that you can take away. So this is a great thing for you to know at 23, that yeah, let's not just be like, oh, we have a catchy chorus, let's just run with it. I think that
hmm,
it's important. Somebody like Frank is going to know how important it is to work hard and be like, yeah, that is nice, but let's come up with something else. So I think
yeah,
having somebody like Frank in your corner is great. And you are a little lucky that this year found Frank not on the road like they usually are.
right,
I
yeah,
told both Frank and Brian when I talked to them how disappointed I was that I wasn't able to see Tesla out on tour with Alice Cooper and Lita Ford, as I had been really looking forward to this year. But it works out great for you because, I mean, I don't know, the band's out on the road so much, to be able to get
yeah,
this kind of time with him.
yeah. They're
So
workaholics, man.
yeah. Oh yeah.
More power to them. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah. No, exactly. I know, and it's great. And and it's there've been a lot of times where I've seen them where they have this spot in a bill where they're like the first of like three bands. So, they're sometimes going on at like 6:30, and they get like 35 minutes or something, and it's like they just pack so much into it. So it's great because I also have always enjoyed seeing them, do their own headline shows as well. So hopefully they're out there. And you were talking about how much you want to be able to play live. Obviously, it's very hard to predict that at this point. I
Right.
mean, I have talked to people who've done some shows because there's, places in the country where over the summer they felt like they could do stuff outdoors. You and I are both in California. There's not a lot of live music happening.
Yeah,
There
unfortunately.
there've been some drive-in shows, and when those first started, I'm like, no, that doesn't sound like fun. But now that it's like, 9 months in, I'm like, oh, I probably should have gone to one or two of those drive-in shows, because at least
Yeah.
I would have seen some music.
Hmm.
Uh, what's the sort of, I know it's hard to actually like, oh yeah, we're going to release this then and we hope to go on tour then, but what's the plan to release some more songs, release an album, and then hopefully tour at some point in 2021 if things are going well?
Yeah, right now we're just looking through the ideas that I've come up with, and some songs we have a good handful that we like, and we're just molding them right now, and kind of doing some pre-production and seeing where we feel afterwards. I wouldn't rule out an album, but in today's world, I've noticed as far as we'll call indie artists like myself, not signed to a major label per se. EPs and singles are the pattern that I've noticed.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And just talking to sort of major labels, I assume you're familiar with that band Dirty Honey. That's a new
oh yeah,
band, and they don't have representation, and yet they get their songs played on the radio, and they get a lot of streams and songs, I mean, and sales and things like that. I
hmm,
talked to one of those guys, and it's just more like it's a different model, and that's kind of the problem. I think you have a lot of people at record companies who understand what that model is, but then you have people. I'm 44, so like if I worked at a record company, I would probably be like, well, you got to put out an album and then you go out on tour. And I think that
yeah,
there's something to be said for that. But I think there's also like, yeah, you can work up to putting out an album, but you might as well put out some songs first. And
hmm,
even your established artists seem to be doing that now, putting out a song like months before the album's supposed to come
oh
out,
yeah.
because it's like,
AC/DC
yeah,
is to my mind the most recent major artist that's done that. I think they released like what was it, Shot in the Dark, like
yeah.
2 months before the album came out.
Yeah, and it used to be like a week before the album came out. It's like, okay, now we'll put it out. But it's like
Hmm.
so much of it is pre-orders, but just also being out there. And yeah, with ACDC, it's a perfect example because they could basically follow whatever model they want. And they're like, yeah, let's just let people know that we're back. And you know, just exciting for the idea to get to see, any of the bands that we're talking about next year. But hoping to get to check out you live at some point. I saw in here that at some point you guys you opened for Strawberry Alarm Clock at the Whiskey, not too
Yeah,
far from here, which that's one of
yeah.
my favorite venues is the Whiskey. I mean, I had a friend who hosted a TV show there. She did a show that was called World's Greatest Tribute Bands. So there
Yep,
would be
I know
tribute bands
exactly
from,
what you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah, there would be
Mm.
tribute bands from around the world. So I would go to that venue like every week, a little bit for free drinks, but mostly I would go because I wanted to see these bands. And it's just
That's cool.
it's like such a cool like little venue, and it's such a throwback. Especially when you think about like, you know, Jim Morrison being too scared to face the audience and singing backwards, in like
Yeah,
1966. I think that I look forward to the next time, you're somewhere like that, and who knows, somewhere bigger before too long.
yeah, me too, definitely. That's
Uh,
that show. Sorry
yeah,
to
go
interrupt,
ahead.
but
No, go ahead.
we finished our set because we had like a half hour or whatever, and we were opening
Yeah.
for Strawberry Alarm Clock, and I think we were the first actual band of the night. And so there was about 150, maybe 200 people in the venue. And we were going to close with War Pigs. And we
Nice.
looked up on the Whiskey's YouTube channel to see how their video production was. And the very first song that pops up is War Pigs. So I was like, well, we can't do that. That's out of the
Yeah.
question. I was like, what if we did Stranglehold? And my band was like, really? You want to play Ted Nugent in, it's LA, right? I was like, yeah, but it's the song. It's not his like
Yeah.
political views that we're singing about. They're like, okay, well, if you want to do that. And so at the end of our set, I naively asked the crowd, I was like, hey, who here likes Ted Nugent? And I have it in our archive. You can hear from the stage mics like 4 or 5 loud no. And the one guy, I'm pretty sure it was one of the guys from Texas, he was like, yeah. And I was like, well,
Well, good.
this one's for you, dude. And so we played it and knocked it out. And we were talking to
Yeah.
Strawberry Alarm Clock's tour manager afterwards, and he was like, you know what, when you guys said who likes Ted Nugent, I was like, oh God, he doesn't know where he's at, but he's young, so hopefully it works out. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
dude, how'd we do? He's like, well, I was actually Ted's drummer in the 80s,
Oh, cool.
and you guys did really good. I was like, oh, I'm glad.
Yeah. No, look, Ted is one of those amazing guys. He's highly entertaining if you're going to talk to him about hunting, and
Mhm.
if you can just sort of ride through the political talk, that's fine. But he'll do interviews with somebody like Eddie Trunk on Sirius, where it's just like, I don't want to talk about politics, I want to talk about rock and roll. You talk to him about rock and roll for hours, and it's like, it's easy to think of him as the guy, in the media that people think of, but
Yeah.
you can't argue with the body of work. And look, there
Oh,
are plenty
totally.
of people whose politics you could definitely take or leave. Wherever anybody stands, it's just like,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, we get it. We know about the rainforest, we know about this, but are you a good musician? And
Right.
Ted's amazing. So Stranglehold, I think, is a great choice. It's almost like if you didn't ask if people liked Ted and you just started playing, everybody's like, oh yeah, I love this song. And then
Yeah.
later on they would have thought about, hey, wait a minute,
Right. Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
vote for somebody that I don't want to vote for? But
Yeah.
anyway, well, so that's great. Well, I can't wait to see who you ask people if they like the next time that you're down in LA, and
Me,
what the
I
reaction
hope.
is. And so you mentioned the way people can find the song. What's just the best way to keep tabs on you and know what's new and what's coming? Is the website, social media?
Well, we are the most active on Instagram and Facebook,
Okay.
and both of those are tag, so to speak, is Austin Moe official. But on Facebook, there's an underscore in between my last name and the word official, and we'll pop right up. And I try and post, a couple times a week of what we're doing and all that stuff, and hopefully I don't have a countdown timer or anything, but sooner or later, maybe we can start doing some shows again and melting faces.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because the if we had this conversation 2 months ago, I would have felt like, oh yeah, probably, because
Mm-hmm.
you definitely saw shows that were happening in other parts of the country. It's a little hard to figure out, but then now there's news of people getting a vaccine, and then you feel like, all right, I don't know that maybe somebody's gonna play at like Wembley Arena in 2021. I don't know about
Yeah.
the huge venues, but I think that especially outdoor shows, I don't know. I like to think, because I want to convince myself of this, I think there's going to be a lot of outdoor shows this summer, just maybe, not the capacity that we're used to, but I think people will be perfectly happy to, you know, get out there and just, see anything again, and
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah. So, well, Austin, it's been great getting to meet you. Like I said, I love the song. Can't wait to hear more. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.